The Green Ops podcast is brought to you by F3 Tactical, Spotter Up, Sons of Liberty Gunworks, and Blue Force Gear. Brittle, and you also don't want to be
Gumby. You don't want to be Gumby.
Yeah, so
sure.
finding that happy medium. How does one go about doing that? Obviously, you're a yoga instructor. Is yoga the way, or is there something else? Like, how do you find that nice balance between like me? I'm a strong dude. I'm fairly stiff. I am trying to work on my mobility, so I am actively working on that. But how does somebody go about saying, like, I need to find that happy medium? How are you finding that?
That is a great question. And I would say it's kind of personal, but it's where you identify the issues that you're having. Let's just say you squat, right? You do weight training. If you can't go full depth below parallel, for example, that's a mobility issue, right? I would work on mobility and do some very basic yoga postures that can really enhance your range of motion. For example, just reaching overhead if you're doing a snatch, right? You want that mobility in your shoulders, but you also want that full range and extension. So that would be something yoga would be really good at. Something I'm noticing, say for instance, in the shooting world, is I'm seeing people very compact in their movement. They're not really maximizing rotation, extension. I saw this one guy in one of the courses, he couldn't get off the ground. He was stuck there, and these things can definitely help alleviate or rectify those issues for sure. But to answer your question, how do you identify what it is that you need? One, maybe talk to someone like me. Find an expert in the field, have an assessment done, right? That's what I do. I do a lot of private instruction. We do an assessment, for example. We identify what it is that you want, what your goals are, any previous and current existing injuries, that kind of thing. And then I set up a program. Right. Okay. And usually I like to start off base level, like a baseline kind of program is always mobility. Like I would say, let's do some SMR, which is self-myofascial release, like foam rolling, lacrosse ball. You can Google that, and it's also on my library, on my website, of all these different mobility movements, like 3 or 4 minute videos that shows you how to target like shoulder mobility, right? Getting into your deltoid, your pec minor, your lats, stuff like that, that really can inhibit your range of motion, especially when we're shooting, we're very one-sided, right? Unless you're always moving to your support side, we're pretty dominant on the one side. So we're favoring one side constantly. That goes for musicians. If you play guitar, for example, one side. If you play tennis, one side. So there's an imbalance. And the thing is, our bodies are naturally imbalanced, but as we continue moving a certain way, that imbalance becomes further tipped in one direction. So mobility and yoga, stretching, all that stuff will help rectify and bring ourselves back into that middle point where we feel strong, but we can move our bodies as well.
And real quick, you said that on your website, people can watch these videos. What is the website if they wanted to go watch the video?
Oh, so my website is virginialungyoga.com. And it's in an evolution because I used to teach, my studio, which I closed back in 2020. I went online, did a lot of Zoom live classes. So they weren't just pre-recordings, although I'll record it and you can play it back if you're a member.
That's cool.
But I have a library of movement. So it's like upper body mobility, lower body mobility, core strengthening, core stabilization. In a class that I kind of spearheaded called MORE. MORE is my signature. It stands for Mobility and Recovery. Okay. And includes a little bit of HIIT training, which is high intensity interval training with dynamic stretching movements, which is sort of the best of both worlds. You got that mobility piece and that stability piece, but you also got this active stretching, which is far more effective than, say, I'm just laying there in this pose, right? Because we have a broad spectrum of yoga, right? You got, I call sleepy time yoga, where you're just kind of laying there. It's restorative and it feels great because sometimes we need that.
Love that type of yoga. I've done that. Man, it's great.
I am a big fan.
Wake
I'm a
up
big
when
fan.
it's all done.
Yeah.
100%, because, you know, we're going to tap into a little sidebar here. There's a lot to be said about mental reprieve. Like when we are just constantly going in our head, there's a lot of tension that correlates into our bodies. And also there becomes a disconnect. We get too...
Complete episode available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app. New Green Ops podcast episodes available every Thursday. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the new content.